My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content.
All right, guys, welcome back to Property Profits Podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Kaminsky, filling in for Dave Dubow. And if you've ever wondered how a former roofing company owner turned real estate investor conquers the challenges of finding profitable deals in today's market, well, tonight, my guest, Ivan Rubio, hailing from New Hampshire and Maine, he's going to share his secrets to success in leveraging operations experiences for real estate investments. Ivan, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Bryce. Appreciate it.
Yeah, operations experience is huge, especially if you're doing flips, particularly.
Yeah.
But I think it helps all the way across the board, because if you're using, I would even say if you're using capital or private capital, at the end of the day, the faster that thing is done and profitable, the better it is. So let's rewind to the beginning and then we'll get back to that. How did you get started in real estate? What got it in your ear and got you in the game?
Yeah, so I grew up in the construction industry. From a child, I was exposed to it. My father restarted a roofing company when I was a teenager. And then from there, I kind of learned the basics of framing a house, putting a house together, the whole process from rough to end. Kind of, where the inspection lies, basically the details, ins and outs of making a home a home. We obviously were exposed to roofing in specific, so we got a lot of exposure to the types of stuff that can happen to a home if you don't take care of it. So that was the big one, is really getting exposed, and a lot of our clients were investors. So we would go out, do their roofs, and get the job done, and we were pretty quick, 1-2 days we're out. So I was able to see some of the stuff that they did through the partial ownership of that roofing business in Florida. Obviously went to college, did my thing, and then I had the privilege of marrying a wonderful wife who is my business partner. And from there, I kind of still had that nugget in my head because I remembered all the stuff that I had learned from roofing, and I was still partial owner of the roofing company. I had an operator, I had everything going. So I was like, all right, I've kind of systemized this business. Now I need to take the cash somehow, some way, and do something. When you have just cash sitting, it's like, well, what do you do? So I kind of was like, there's more to this. So I started to have that conversation with my wife is, hey, do you think it's a good idea to like invest in real estate? Like I kind of told her the story of like what my thought process was, how I had that little nugget in my head. And that was in 2021. So in beginning of 2020, no, in February 2021, we had that conversation. And in March of 2021, I purchased the first one in Maine, Bangor, Maine. So I, kind of, again, I already had an idea of how real estate worked and I already knew how to analyze, do all that, had studied, done the whole thing. Bigger pockets, you kind of expose yourself. And then the next month, I actually bought a house hack. So I bought a property in Bangor, Maine, hundreds of miles away from me. And then I bought a house hack the next month. One of them, the Bangor, Maine one, it was really just a value add. It was missing a driveway. And me knowing construction relatively well, I was like, well, the reason this hasn't sold is because
it has no driveway.
It has no driveway. So that's how I started. From there, it kind of it's crazy how like you do your first two or three, and then you're kind of like, wait, okay, this isn't as hard as I thought it would be. You are exposed to challenges and things that you're like, oh man, but you find a solution somehow. One way or another, you figure it out, which is kind of how I've operated is, all right, I have figured it out. And now it's just like, a constant, it's a business of solving problems constantly. And managing timelines. That's the big thing.
Well, I always say it's not we buy houses, it's we buy problems, because if we're getting a discount, it's because there's something either not done or like the driveway, someone could have solved that if they had the capital and they were
Yeah.
doing the research to say, oh, needs a driveway, it's landlocked or whatever. So
Yeah. So that one actually was middle of winter.
mm,
So there was no one biting. And so I was like, all right, I'm coming in. And I came in, and then within a year, I mean, I made 60K. So it was just by adding I think it was like I spent maybe $4,000 for the driveway.
like
So
an asphalt thing.
yeah, it was like
Yeah.
straightforward, to the point, and every property on that block had that type of driveway except
Hmm.
that one. So I was like, okay, I think this is an easy one.
Hmm.
So yeah.
And so did you end up like selling that thing off? Is that what you bought it, did the driveway and sold it off?
Yeah, so I actually kept it for a little bit because I was like, all right, let me just keep it for a little bit. I was cash flowing on that thing like $900. So I kept it, accumulated 900. I think it was like quite a bit. It was like 10 grand I picked up on. Uh,
Mm,
the rest of it did some minor kind of cosmetic work. It wasn't really in that Bangor, Maine area. It's
mm,
kind of you really have to look at your comps, and a lot of the comps are just straightforward laminate countertops. It's not like, this luxurious thing. There's no granite
hmm.
countertops. There's no like it's just straightforward to the point. So I was able to sell that within like a year and made $60,000. So
If I had a soundboard, it'd be like $60,000.
yeah.
So what do you like most about real estate investing?
Uh, it's almost like I really enjoy the process of taking something and walking in, and it smells terrible. I mean, it smells like,
All
animals.
the three smells, yes.
Yeah.
Cigarettes,
That's like
pets, and what's
that's
the other one? Usually mold is the other one.
mold, like
It's
the
like a mix
musty.
of those three
Yeah.
things, and it creates its own smell. It's like
Yeah.
that we would walk in and be like, "Oh, it smells like money in here."
Yeah, that's pretty much I really enjoy taking something that it almost feels like this, how can someone fix this, and making it into something beautiful, where it's like, dude, I don't even know if this was just, it's almost like I enjoy that process, and then
Mm.
also the process of relationships with the contractors, relationships with the vendors, relationships even with the lender that I use, like all of that combined. I really enjoy that process. I really enjoy doing that every day. It just so happens that I get to make money doing it. So it's more of a, and because I grew up in the construction industry,
Mm-hmm.
I think the value add component of the business is almost like, oh, it's similar to roofing, where you take something down and you make it into something
Yeah,
else.
rip it off. I was gonna
Yeah.
say roofing in Florida, the Mother Nature rips those roofs off.
Oh, those things are naturally ripped off.
Yeah,
It's like,
there's a cycle.
yeah,
I was gonna say I don't really like you said, oh, I like the relationships of X, Y, Z, and you said lenders. Yeah, and I appreciate that part of the business, but I really don't like dealing with contractors. Like it's
yeah,
really frustrating, I guess, for my personality type when it feels like people can't think for themselves. But as an
yeah,
operator and a guy in operations, like I'm sure you have the system so that people don't have to think for themselves, but it
yeah,
just it frustrates me when it feels obvious and it doesn't end up being obvious. So
yeah. It's
what maybe isn't so good about uh real estate and what you're doing these days as far as real estate goes?
um I think my least favorite part is the politics of it. Sometimes you go into these small local towns and having to deal with the inspectors, having
Hmm.
to hear what sometimes there's code says you're supposed to do this, but they try to enforce X, Y, Z. And I think that's the part that I least enjoy.
Mm.
Just because, like you just said, it's like with a contractor, you can manage the contractor and you can like, hey, that was wrong. Like, I had a system in place. You should have just looked at the document.
Hmm.
Whereas with a town inspector, I can't do that. It's
No,
like
they
they
just
just,
they're the authority, right?
yeah. So, and I think once I got into the flipping game is when it started, and I
Hmm.
realized, oh wow, I have to play this game, and I have to do it well, especially in these local New Hampshire markets. It's
Yeah, it can be county to county. I remember in Ohio, you
yeah,
could do anything you wanted, as long as it was Cleveland. But if you
yeah,
went one county over, all of a sudden there was a whole new, like if it was Shaker Heights, which was literally it would end, and then it was Shaker Heights across this road, and then there was
yeah,
a huge pile of exterior requirements,
yeah,
interior requirements, and permits, and they had their own whole thing, and it was just like, we're not flipping on the other side of the street. We're just going to stay
yeah,
in Cleveland where we understand and they're reasonable. Granted, for those reasons, Shaker Heights properties are very nice. They look great. They have great permits.
yeah.
So it's just, I guess it's about the battle that you want to fight. So has there been any major challenges you've had to overcome in your real estate journey so far?
Yeah, so I think the main one it has been when I first started. Um, it's almost like you have to get rid of the I didn't really have as much capital.
Mm,
So I wasn't coming in, with this substantial amount of money. Yeah, I had this roofing business operating, but I have a partner, so you can't just like pull money out. You have a specific
yeah.
distribution. So I think since I've been in real estate, that's the biggest challenge is managing cash, managing how much you have, when you kind of do things, and how methodic you have to be very methodical and strategic as to
Hmm.
how you're going to do something. Um, that has been probably the biggest challenge is figuring out the right timeline, the right momentum, the right like how much cash is actually needed. And a lot of that has been primarily because I've been using my own capital.
Hmm. Hmm.
So you kind of have to manage well so that you can grow your capital so that you can actually make a business. Because
Hmm.
ultimately, a business has to make money. And
Hmm.
so I think that's been the biggest challenge for me is just really managing cash and being able to not run out of money.
Yeah. My buddy always says, he runs a cash flowing, his real estate is cash flowing. He
Yeah.
did some flips, but he decided, with his main business as a carpenter, he's like, I'm just gonna buy and hold and get equity. And he says, real estate is two things: working with the limited resources we have within that confine and servicing mortgage debt. That's it.
Yeah.
Those are the two things. If you can
Yeah.
do that, you're a successful real estate investor. So
Yeah.
when it comes to real estate investing, what do you think your secret sauce is? What comes easily to you that other people might maybe find difficult to do?
I think managing people.
Mm,
Um, that probably comes a lot easier for me than it does for a lot of other people. Um,
mm,
I think also the fact that I just grew up in the construction industry. A lot of times I have found that when I'm out and about trying to talk to contractors to give bids, I can speak their language. I can
mhm,
speak their whole I can pretty much talk like them, be one of them basically, because I know what
mhm,
it's like to do the hard work. So
mhm,
I think that has been my kind of a comparative advantage for me is being able to relate to them and being able to manage that the people component of the business has been
yeah.
probably one of the best parts, and that allows me to focus my time on really just uh, I'm very effective at executing a timeline of a flip. I mean, my last
Mhm,
flip was done in 2.3 months. So
mhm.
it was like a fast flip, made 38 grand off of, less than 2.5 months.
Yeah,
So
and that's really the thing, because some people come in as like maybe they're an IT guy
yeah,
and they've never hired anyone but maybe like a guy to build their fence one time or
yeah,
something like that. And so navigating that and um the contracting side of the business can be a little bit tricky too, because they're not all registered with the Better Business Bureau, if you know what I mean.
right,
So um they can be taken advantage of too, because they can get finessed into a contract and
right,
the guy walks off with the deposit or whatever, or a
right.
guy asks for like half of it up front, and the person who's brand new, they're like, sounds reasonable. the
Yeah.
guy's never to be heard from again, you know? So
Right.
there's horror stories when it comes to the people component.
Yeah,
Um,
there is. And I have been blessed to have never dealt with that so far.
well, you
Only
probably
with
can tell,
only with electricians. I don't know why. Electricians just
well, they're solo operators. It's hard to get a handle on them sometimes. Plumbers,
yeah,
electricians. Um, that's pretty much it. Just those two trades. There's
those
enough
two trades
reels.
are the most difficult.
Well, there's
Plumbers,
enough reels on social media of like electricians and how they work and plumbers and how
yeah,
they work and necessary part of the business. A good electrician is definitely worth what
yeah.
they're charging.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of where I'm at right now is like, for example, the electrician I have in our current flip, he's pretty good, but it's just a matter of like you have to really learn how to manage expectations of like, what is your timeline? Can you meet my
Hmm.
time?
Hmm.
Um, I have found that it's the most difficult with electricians and plumbers. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, they're in demand like crazy. We're in a
yeah.
labor shortage on that. Like anyone can knock down a wall, but who's got the ticket to, oh, HVAC. The other one is HVAC,
HVAC, yeah, that's
the
another one.
HVAC and the furnaces and hot water tanks.
Yeah.
But so where are you taking the business this year?
The goal is to do so. I got into the flipping business last year.
Hmm.
Uh, and the goal is to grow that part of the business. I want to do at least 6 flips a year.
Yeah.
So right now I'm sitting at like 3 or 4, but I want to get to like six or eight.
Hmm.
And I also, as a strategy, take some of the profits and I purchase discounted multifamily. Uh,
Mm.
so actually, before going full time into real estate, I worked for a multifamily syndicator that I was director of operations. I did all of that shebang.
Hmm.
So I had the wonderful pleasure of being able to be exposed to that and
Hmm.
seeing how that can be a good way to diversify your portfolio. So I've been doing that this past year, and I'm going to probably continue to do that. Small multifamily purchase, take some of the profits from our flips and purchase those and, renovate them and do the value add process and, capital event, get out.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, um, that's pretty much where I want to take the business this year. And I think to do that, it involves a lot of that's why I went full time now because it involves you do actually working and doing a lot for the business.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and it's like a good exit strategy in that eventually that's the goal for most people is to diversify into multi and just get the equity and
Right.
possibly start lending. And 10 years down the road, you just start lending to guys that are such as ourselves who are
Yeah.
still in the business of doing deals.
Right.
So with all you've accomplished so far, what would you say your biggest obstacle is now?
I think for the most part it's capital and just, you know, bandwidth.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just me and my wife. My wife does all our direct mail, all our she's a jack of all trades. I mean, she does all our admin, keeps track of our CRM. And then for me, it's, I'm the cold caller,
Hmm.
the guy who receives the calls. I'm the guy who goes off and gets bids. I'm the guy who I do everything. So I think that's where the challenges lay, and then obviously capital. Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes you get some insane deals and you don't have the capital, and so you have to go out
Yeah.
and find it, and you're like, oh man, like right now I have a few investors, but they're just, they're not gonna, you know, um, they probably can only fund only one deal.
Hmm.
And then
I was
after
going to
that,
ask, what are you doing to fund this flip project? Is flipping, um, depending on your pipeline, can be a little bit capital intensive.
it
Because
is.
it's like you're outlaid for 6 months at a time. So you have to constantly be bringing in new money and the
Yeah.
money's constantly being like, yo, that was fun. And they leave.
Yeah.
It's not long-term capital. So what are you doing right now to fund your deals?
So I have a private lender. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
he will fund 2 deals at a time for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, he's funding my purchase of 3 unit in Manchester, New Hampshire. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
almost like 25% off market value. And then I purchased the flip. So I have two going on at the same time right now. So he's funding most of my construction, well, all of my construction funding, and 95% of the purchase price. I'm getting these things for like pennies on a dollar.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they're in pretty rough shape. So you have
Yeah.
to go in and kind of renovate them and do the whole shebang. But that's most of southern New Hampshire. Almost everything was built in the turn of the century. So it's
Yeah.
pretty much like you're going to deal with these 1900s houses or
Knob and
1950s.
tube,
Yeah, knob and tube. So it's like,
asbestos,
yeah.
old
So,
boilers, things like that.
so it's like boilers you've never seen in your life. But yeah.
Yeah, and when I was in this basement and the city I'm in used to have a central boiler there where
Yeah.
all the whole downtown was on one boiler. And
Wow.
so I was in this basement and it was hooked up and there was these massive, they looked like the hood of a car, but they were just like racks of rads,
Wow.
and they would pump the water through and then back out to the city. And so the city was like the hot water provider. It was very weird. This is like 1881. So
Yeah.
you get the idea that, like, if you're dealing with turn of the century stuff, you're gonna find all sorts of weird and wild heating
Yeah.
things and
Yeah.
construction methods, but at least the lumber's good. That's one thing I'll say is
Yeah.
typically the Douglas fir is still good. So,
Yeah.
um, as far as growing your business in regards to your capital partners, what sort of things are you doing to get access to money to fund more deals?
Right now, I network a lot. I
Hmm.
go to every possible local networking event. So
Hmm.
I tell everyone what I do. I've been more active on social media. I pretty much, there's not a person that I know that doesn't know what I do and
Hmm.
I'm looking for. So a lot of the times I have found, at least the one investors that I have that are lined up, they've heard of me through someone else. So they
Hmm.
kind of heard that I did a deal with someone and they kind of, or they know me from a personal relationship. I go to church. People there know that that's what I do for a living. So they'll
Hmm.
just naturally ask me. And I also have the benefit of living in a very, there's a pretty high income communities here because we're near
Hmm.
Boston. So it's like
Yeah.
not hard to find the capital. It's just, you just have to put in the work.
Hmm.
Um, which is what I've been doing. But again, how many investors are there out there? It's like, how do you stand out? Are you an attractive investment for them to be able to put their money?
Hmm.
So that's what I've been doing right now is really just exposing myself, being more vulnerable with my story and what I'm doing, as opposed to what I was doing, 2 years ago. So
Yeah. So once you've got these, I guess you would call them leads or people who are interested in the idea, what have you found to be most effective in like keeping in touch with them and keeping them kind of interested in what you're doing?
I found we deliver a newsletter.
Hmm.
Um, So I find that exposing them to my current projects, what I'm currently doing, I make these little videos sometimes of like what me doing a walkthrough, walking with my contractor
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
showing them like, hey, here's some of the stuff we did. Like right now we opened an LVL beam, put it up, put the support columns. I sent them that little clip. We kind of reduced it into like a 30-second video. I do things like that where I keep them engaged. Because I have all their personal phone numbers, I'm still small enough where I have their personal phone numbers. I'll reach
Hmm.
out to them periodically and just tell them like kind of what we're seeing in the market, the types of deals we're finding. And if I haven't talked to them for a while, I like to kind of still get an idea of their goals because
Yeah.
that's a big component of mine is I really like to hear them out in terms of their goals. Like, what are your goals? Because if you're looking to cash out in a month, I can't guarantee you that, dude.
Yeah, and they're in flux too.
Yeah,
People's lives change just like their positions change. And just
right,
because they said they were going to lend to you last month and you didn't get in a deal, you
right.
call them up this month. Hey, I got a deal for you. No, I
Yeah,
bought a boat. Whatever. Cool. What kind of boat is it? And you go
yeah.
down that line. So, are you find the deal and then the money, or do you prefer to have your capital lined up and then go looking for deals?
I am a mix of both.
Mm.
So it depends on the deal.
Mm.
So for example, sometimes I'll have like right now I have people waiting to
Mm.
invest their capital. So I know their criteria. I know what they're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that if I find that type of deal, just go out and ask them.
Yeah.
And then there are times, for example, my last flip, the one I have right now, one of the ones I have right now, I didn't have anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it under contract, and then I was like, all right, I have 3 weeks to find
Mm-hmm.
an investor. But I went out to a bunch of investor events, and I found someone, and they knew of my work when I was working for the syndicator operator.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of were like, oh, I remember you. You used to do all that, manage all the renovations for that guy. I was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
was me. So
That was me. I'm that guy.
so he
Well,
kind of felt comfortable.
yeah, that kind of brings me to my next question. You know, like with people having to invest significant amounts, in a lot of cases, maybe not all cases, but you know, for a lot of people, 30K is significant or 50K or 100K, but to ultimately get them to come along, they need to know you, like you, and
Right.
trust you. So what are some things that you're doing to kind of build those criteria as far as your interaction with the network that you're part of? And you know, before the show, we talked a little bit about your social that you're working on. And so tell me a little bit more about what you're doing to kind of build those three up so you can get more investors.
So here in southern New Hampshire, one of the things that well, social media obviously is big.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Two, I actually am part of a church, so
Yeah.
it's like if if there's an easy way to do that, it's literally those like people at church. It's like so easy because naturally you have the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And through my investor meetups, I actually have focused a lot on young realtors.
Mm.
Um, I have found here in southern New Hampshire that the young realtors
Mm-hmm.
that are hungry and just like they're very you can almost see it in their eyes. It's like, oh yeah, you're a good person to know. And it's
Mm-hmm.
more so because they have that charisma, enthusiasm that they just start to talk about you.
Yeah.
So eventually that's kind of how I started doing it is I just started doing that. I also started using the property management company of that president of the NHREI here, the New Hampshire Real Estate Investment
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Association. He has a property management company, really good. Started using him, and then eventually kind of built my reputation around that. I actually, like I said, somehow found my way working for a syndicator, so that is pretty popular here in southern New Hampshire, where I eventually kind of have built my credibility around,
You got that street cred.
yeah, like street cred. And I have found that at those networking events, it's like focus your efforts on the people that are constantly finding deals.
Mm.
So that was realtors, property managers, and as much as people say wholesalers are kind of, it's like every now and then, but I have found lately they're kind of off.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean
but
there's a lot. It's like realtors too, right? If you
yeah,
look at 1,000 realtors, how many of them are active even? So
yeah,
it's like because there's no blockade to keep any wholesaler from calling himself a wholesaler or herself a wholesaler.
yeah.
You just wake
So
up in the morning and you put the hat on, you say, wholesaler. Now you're in the business. Have you done any deals? No, but I'm working on it. A
so I've
wholesaler.
done a lot of that. And like I said, specifically in those investor events, is my focus is on property managers, people who are constantly finding themselves in deals,
Hmm.
specifically property managers and these young realtors. There's a few agencies here that are really like kind of infamous for mm, deal finders.
Hmm.
Good for them. They've built their reputation around that. So I pretty
Yeah,
much have,
maybe they're marketing more than the next person. They're just
which I
sending out
think
more
it is.
flyers. Yeah,
And I've gotten a few deals from them. So I'm like, oh, I mean, it's a deal's a deal. I
they
can't.
came through. They came through on their reputation. So
Yeah. So
yeah, if people you know, they want to reach out to you, they want to find out more, they want to connect with you, possibly invest with you, what should they do? How do they find you?
yeah, so my social media is REI Operations. So you can find me on Instagram. And you can also check out our company online at highlandventures.co. So that's pretty much the two
Awesome.
ways.
Awesome, Ivan. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by and letting people know what's going on in the New Hampshire market. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. And until next time, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.
Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.